The Young and the Restless spoilers, next to week full September 8th to September 19th, 2025. Clare had learned early on that being part of the Newman dynasty meant constant scrutiny, endless battles for loyalty, and the suffocating weight of Victor's expectations. At first, she tried to respect the patriarch's rules, even when his iron grip on the family made her uneasy. But the day he unleashed his venom on Kyle, the man she loved, something inside her snapped. She listened as Victor dismissed Kyle with disdain, painting him as unworthy, as if Clare's heart was nothing more than a pawn in his eternal games with the Abbotts. She furrowed her brow, her voice steady, but seething as she told him plainly that if he could not treat Kyle with dignity, she would never worship him in the way he demanded. For one flickering moment, Victor backed down, promising to retreat, offering the illusion that he would honor her choice. Yet even as the words left his mouth, Clare sensed the hollow ring in them. It was not in Victor's nature to surrender. His promises were as fleeting as shadows, and soon enough, she discovered just how far he was willing to go to undermine her happiness. The revelation hit her like a physical blow. Victor had hired Audra to sabotage her relationship with Kyle. Rage boiled through her as she realized her grandfather's manipulation extended not just into her family life, but into the most sacred part of her existence, her love. Audra, with her polished fouade and hidden ambitions, became Victor's weapon, and the betrayal cut Clare to the core. All her defiance, all her pleas for him to respect her choices, had been nothing but wasted breath. In a fit of fury, she made the impulsive decision that shattered everything. She rejected Kyle's proposal. The man who had stood by her through suspicion and scandal, the man who had loved her despite Diane's cruel revelations, now stood broken before her. His ring refused not because he failed her, but because she could no longer endure the toxic strings of her family's interference. It was a rejection as much of Kyle as it was of Victor, but in that single choice, Clare fractured both her relationship and her already fragile place in Genoa City. Victor, always blind to the emotional wreckage his schemes caused, tried to make amends in the only way he knew, by bringing more revelations. He approached Clare with talk of Jack's son, as though shifting her focus toward another Abbott weakness would mend the chasm between them. But in his arrogance, Victor failed to see the truth. Clare's anger had grown beyond him. She was no longer a granddaughter looking for approval. She was a woman betrayed by the one man she had tried to honor. Each word he offered now only deepened her resentment. Far from mending their relationship, Victor had driven her further away, adding fuel to the fire of her independence and feeding her bitterness not just against him, but against the man she had once believed she could marry. Kyle, meanwhile, struggled to process her rejection. He had fought through his mother's warnings, endured public humiliation over Clare's questionable identity, and defended her when the city turned against her. Yet when it mattered most, she turned her fury not only on Victor, but on him. He could understand her pain, could even share in her rage at Victor's manipulation, but to have her punish him in the process cut too deeply. It left Kyle disoriented, torn between anger and heartbreak, desperate for answers, but too wounded to reach for them. Clare's choice left them both spiraling, their love hanging in tatters, while Genoa City waited to see whether they would fight their way back or crumble completely. In her anguish, Clare found herself confiding in Holden. It was reckless, perhaps even foolish, but Holden represented something Kyle could not at that moment. A mirror of her anger, someone who understood betrayal and who was unafraid to acknowledge the darker sides of their lives. One night, intoxicated and consumed by frustration, she lashed out, threatening Audra in her drunken haze, declaring her contempt for the woman who had dared to infiltrate her relationship at Victor's command. Yet beneath the bluster was desperation to know the full truth about her past, about the mistakes and secrets from Los Angeles that still haunted her. She begged Holden to reveal what he knew, to shed light on the shadows she had tried so hard to bury. But Holden refused. He knew the truth, yes, but knowledge was power, and power was something he would never hand over easily, not even to Clare. Holden's refusal did not mean passivity. He harbored his own anger toward Audra, an anger that simmered into threats as their paths crossed. What began as a tense standoff between two former lovers turned into a dangerous dance of hostility and desire. Holden threatened Audra. Audra threatened Holden, each one promising destruction if the other dared to push too far. And yet, in the midst of their venom, sparks flew. Their confrontations burned hotter than their past romances with Clare or Kyle, revealing a twisted chemistry that neither could deny. The irony was not lost on anyone watching. While they tore each other apart, they also fed a fire that could, if stoked, become an alliance. Both knew what it was to be underestimated, to be dismissed by Genoa City's elite, and the more they clashed, the more it became clear that they might be stronger together than apart. Instead of destroying each other, they could channel their fury into tearing down the dynasties that had treated them as disposable. Whether they realized it or not, their war of words was slowly transforming into a dangerous pact. While this storm brewed, elsewhere in Genoa City, another storyline quietly shifted the balance. Sally, restless and uncertain, made the surprising decision to move in with Billy. On the surface, it seemed like a bold choice, one rooted in a desire for companionship and perhaps stability. But underneath, it reeked of hesitation. Sally herself seemed unsure of the path she was taking, questioning Billy's decisions while ignoring her own. Was she truly committed to him, or was she simply running from the ghosts of her past? Billy welcomed her, as he always did, with open arms, but Sally's doubt lingered in every glance, every pause, every question she failed to answer. Their union, instead of being a foundation, became another fragile thread in the tapestry of Genoa City, one that could unravel at any moment under the weight of unspoken fears. In the end, Genoa City stood at a crossroads defined by betrayal, anger, and shifting loyalties. Clare had turned against both Kyle and Victor, carving out a lonely path fueled by resentment. Kyle was left heartbroken, questioning whether love could survive betrayal. Victor had overplayed his hand, alienating the granddaughter he thought he could control. Holden and Audra simmered with unresolved passion and dangerous intent, threatening to redirect their fury into a campaign against the wealthy elites who had toyed with their lives. And Sally, caught in her own uncertainty, tethered herself to Billy in a decision that seemed less about love and more about escape. Every character's choice fed into the larger storm, one that threatened to engulf the city in yet another wave of scandal, heartbreak, and revelation. And through it all, one truth remained. In Genoa City, love was never pure, loyalty was always conditional, and every bond carried the risk of betrayal. For weeks, Daniel had poured himself into his music lessons with Tessa, the sessions serving as both an escape and a discovery of something entirely new within him. Though young, his ear for melody and his ability to translate emotion into sound had surprised everyone, perhaps even himself. Each session, guided by Tessa's patience and artistry, built his confidence until he was no longer the shy boy fumbling over chords, but a budding musician ready to share his voice with the world. The culmination of all that effort was finally at hand. Daniel was preparing to unveil his song to his father, a man whose name was synonymous with rock music, whose legacy loomed large over Daniel's life like both an inspiration and a burden. There was a nervous excitement in his eyes, but also Prita was ready to show that his talent was not just inherited, but nurtured, shaped into something uniquely his own. Tessa's encouragement carried weight. She told him plainly that his father would love the song, not because of obligation or paternal instinct, but because it carried soul. She assured him that music born from authenticity had the power to transcend fear and doubt, and Daniel believed her. Her role in his journey could not be overstated. She had taken his words, raw and hesitant, and woven them into melodies that gave them life. It was her gift, the ability to see potential where others only saw uncertainty, and in Daniel she had found a canvas on which to work that gift. When Daniel looked at her now, it was with admiration that went beyond music. He told her she had made the lyrics and the melody into something beautiful, just like her. The words slipped out with sincerity, uncalculated but powerful, leaving Tessa stunned into silence. She was accustomed to praise for her music, her voice, her performances, but not to hearing herself compared to beauty in such a raw, vulnerable way. The comment lingered in the air between them, and Daniel knew that if he dared to take the next step, to confess the feelings growing in his chest, he might change everything forever. The possibility of love hung heavily in those moments, but Daniel was not the only one standing at a crossroads. Across town, Claire was forging a connection of her own, though hers was rooted in darker soil. She had begun spending more time with Holden, a man whose charm carried the edge of danger, and together they bonded over a shared animosity toward Audra. To Claire, Audra represented betrayal, manipulation, and the cruel interference that had poisoned her relationship with Kyle. To Holden, Audra was a specter from his past, a woman with whom he had shared secrets that still threatened to unravel his life. Their conversations about her were not idle gossip, but hushed confessions tinged with bitterness and rage. What united them was not just hatred, but the recognition that Audra had left scars on both of them. Claire's curiosity eventually pressed past Holden's reluctance. She asked about the depth of his relationship with Audra, probing for details that he had first resisted giving. Finally, with the weight of frustration, he confessed that he and Audra had done something illegal in the past, something that bound them together in ways neither of them could easily escape. He refused to elaborate, but his warning was clear. If Clare knew the truth, her opinion of him might change forever. It was not a boast, but a burden, a reminder that he was not free of sin, and that his past with Audra was more dangerous than she imagined. The admission hung between them like a riddle, begging for an answer. What crime had tethered Holden and Audra together? Was it fraud, theft, blackmail, or something darker, something violent that explained the shadows in their eyes? For Clare, the revelation was not just shocking, it was tempting. Here was a weapon she might wield against Audra, a secret that could expose her rival and shift the balance of power in Genoa City. But wielding it would mean also exposing Holden, the very man she was beginning to trust. Would she use it anyway, sacrificing him to destroy Audra? Or would she keep his secret, letting it simmer until the right moment arrived to turn it against both of them? The choice would not be easy, because Clare's life was already fractured by betrayal. The temptation to lash out, to make Audra pay, might be stronger than her loyalty to someone who was only just beginning to earn her trust. The irony, of course, was that Holden himself seemed uncertain of what he wanted. By warning Clare that the truth might alter her view of him, he both invited her closer and pushed her away. He tested the limits of her loyalty, daring her to see him as more than a victim of Audra's manipulations. And yet, his reluctance to confess fully hinted at shame, a regret for a decision in his past that still haunted him. In Clare, he found someone willing to press him, someone who demanded truth where Audra had thrived on secrecy. Their alliance was fragile, built on shared anger, but it carried the possibility of something more, an explosive partnership that could either bring Audra to her knees or consume them both in the fallout. Meanwhile, Daniel's struggle with his own feelings reached a tipping point. His admiration for Tessa was no longer something he could hide. Her artistry, her kindness, her ability to believe in him when he could not believe in himself at all pulled him closer to the edge of confession. He had seen her stunned silence when he compared her to the beauty of music itself, and he knew she had felt the weight of his words. But could he risk saying more? Could he risk transforming their bond from mentorship into romance, knowing it might jeopardize not only his growth as a musician, but also her role in his family's world? The thought gnawed at him, but his heart, young and impulsive, was not content to remain silent forever. The parallels between Daniel and Clare's journeys were striking. Both stood on the brink of revelations that could change everything. Both torn between truth and silence, between love and betrayal. Daniel's choice could lead to heartbreak or fulfillment, to scandal or salvation. Clare's decision could ignite a war against Audra that might consume Holden as collateral damage. Each of them faced a crossroads where one wrong step could fracture not only their lives, but also the delicate balance of Genoa City itself. And in the background, as always, Genoa's power players Victor, Jack, Diane, Victoria, Audra waited in the wings, ready to seize on any weakness, any confession, any revelation that could tilt the scales of power. What Daniel and Clare did next would ripple through the city like music and thunder, one offering beauty, the other destruction. Whether they chose love, vengeance, or silence, their choices would not remain their own for long. In Genoa City, every secret eventually surfaced, every betrayal eventually demanded a price, and every moment of honesty or dishonesty could shift a course of dynasties. Tensions are reaching a boiling point in Genoa City, and as Friday's episode of The Young and the Restless gears up, fans can expect a nail-biting art where family loyalty, business warfare, and personal secrets collide. At the center of it all is none other than Victor Newman, the patriarch whose iron will has carried him through decades of battles against rivals and even his own bloodline. This time, the stakes feel even higher, as Victor calls a family and business summit to prepare for the next round in the never-ending Newman versus Abbott war. Round 34 is upon us, and Victor has no intention of losing ground to Jack Abbott, especially after what he sees as an unforgivable attack on his wife. The animosity between Victor and Jack is legendary, but Victor's current fury is fueled by more than just corporate rivalry. He firmly believes Jack nearly killed Nikki by allowing her to relapse, and in Victor's mind, no amount of remorse can erase that crime. The accusation itself is shocking, that Jack used an overdose as some twisted lesson for an addict. Whether or not that's exactly how events unfolded, Victor refuses to let go of the image of Nikki nearly destroyed, her life hanging in the balance, and Jack standing at the center of the chaos. For Victor, there is no coming back from that betrayal, and payback is now his singular focus. Fans know when Victor declares war, it's never a matter of if, but when the retaliation will land. Gathering his children at the table, Victor outlines strategy with the precision of a general. Nick and Adam, often at odds themselves, find their roles defined as Victor's soldiers. Both men have battled for their father's approval for years, and now, as Victor sketches out his plan for retaliation against Jack, they know that standing united under his command is the only way forward. The specter of Victoria also looms over the gathering. Though absent from the first round of discussions, Victor hints that his eldest daughter may soon be called to the front lines. Her ruthless instincts and sharp business acumen make her indispensable when the Newman Empire is under threat, and the thought of a united Newman front, all for children aligned with Victor, paints a picture of a dynasty preparing for all-out war. But Victor is not simply relying on family loyalty this time. Ever the strategist, he has his eyes on new tools and new allies, even those who would normally be counted as enemies. One of the most intriguing twists in this episode is Victor's interest in Kane Ashby's AI software. Kane, who has often walked the line between ambition and recklessness, may find himself drawn into a high-stakes alliance, whether he wants it or not. Victor, with his talent for coercion, is prepared to use Kane's creation not merely as a business tool, but as leverage, forcing Kane to choose between survival and betrayal. For Kane, this could mean surrendering more than just his software. It could mean tying his future to Victor's empire in ways that could endanger both his career and his personal life. That personal life is already under siege. Lily Winters, who has endured her share of heartbreak and disappointment where Kane is concerned, has reached her breaking point. She confronts him directly, demanding the truth about his involvement in shady dealings, lies, and hidden agendas. The weight of Kane's secrets threatens to crush their relationship once again, and Lily is determined to get clarity once and for all. Her ultimatum is clear. Kane must confess or risk losing her forever. Viewers know Lily is not a woman who makes idle threats, and Kane's past has always been littered with indiscretions that eventually surface. The idea that Lily will finally force him to put all his cards on the table adds an emotional intensity to the episode that rivals Victor's War Council. As these two storylines unfold in parallel, the contrasts and intersections are striking. On one side, Victor, larger than life, pulling his children into yet another corporate and personal vendetta, his empire standing as both weapon and prize. On the other, Lily and Kane, their marriage tested once again by truth and lies, their family hanging in the balance. Yet both arcs share the same theme: power and honesty, or the lack thereof. Victor believes only in control, bending others to his will until they serve his purposes. Lily, meanwhile, seeks freedom through truth, refusing to live another day under the shadow of Kane's evasions. Both approaches lead to confrontation, and by the end of Friday's episode, the fallout will ripple across Genoa City. Victor's gleeful anticipation of Jack's retaliation only heightens the suspense. He knows Jack will strike back, and rather than fear it, he relishes the thought, already positioning himself to parry and counter. But the idea that Victor might be underestimating Jack or overestimating his children's willingness to follow him into battle cannot be ignored. Nick has long resisted Victor's manipulations, Adam has his own agenda, and Victoria, while capable, has been known to challenge her father's authority when it suits her. Victor may believe he is summoning an army, but what if the cracks in the Newman family widen at the worst possible time?